Hey, what's going on? It's me, John D. Villarreal. We're getting ready to start here momentarily. What a big show. My voice is not 100%, but we're going to do the best we can. But we have a big show today. So much to talk about. Trump, Boebert, Gurley, everything. It's going to be amazing. We're going to talk tech, VC. We're going to talk Newstalk. We're going to talk all kinds of different things. Let's see how we're doing here on the intro.
Offices Tampa, not attorney spokesman.
Body ache.
We're pretty close here, probably 30 seconds out. So yeah, we take your comments as well if you do on YouTube. We're live on LinkedIn and YouTube. I'm going to repost this on Facebook. See how we're doing.
Program and does not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Genesis Communications, its management, staff, or advertisers. Welcome to the John Villarreal Show. Now, here's John.
Oh my goodness. What's up out there, Newstalk 1040 in the greater Tampa Bay area, everywhere from Clearwater, downtown Tampa Bay, Sarasota, Wesley Chapel, Lakeland, Brandon, Bradenton. So many different things to talk about today. Getting over a little bit of sickness here. Voice is not even close to 100%, but we are going to try to be 200% for you out there because we have so much to talk about. I'm going to highlight some things right here. We will be joined by Paul at Villarreal. I'll let him do a little bit more of the heavy lifting today, just vocal-wise. But let me tell you what we're talking about today, because this is big, big, big. We're talking about Donald Trump, President Trump, has a massive, huge, commanding lead in state polls, national polls, all kinds of different polls. We're going to get to that. We're also going to talk about Hunter Biden being indicted. We're also going to talk about President Trump with his interview with Kristen Welker, the new host of Meet the Press. That was a total disaster for Meet the Press, in my opinion. I don't know what was going on there. I also need to talk about Bill Gurley, a VC, former with Benchmark Capital, huge, famous dude, okay? Now, big name in the venture capital industry. Why do I mention this? He was at the All In Summit. Extremely important. What have I been saying? I've been saying that politics and tech and VC don't match. I've been talking about Miami Tech Hub. I've been talking about we're live on LinkedIn right now. So many of the themes that I've been talking about for years, even over a decade or more, I've been explaining it about how Silicon Valley used to be, about how tech has become almost a spoil system, how people are leading with their causes instead of their technology or their business models. And where the money was at, and how it hurt innovation, how it hurt development, how a 50% solution is not a 100% solution. All these things, they really did coalesce in this talk. And if you haven't seen it, I can't recommend it highly enough. It's so good. And we're going to talk about a little bit of that and roll it out. It's about a 25-minute speech and then some Q&A. And it's just a devastating takedown of regulation, of Washington, of politicians, of raising money, lobbyists, all kinds of different things, and how destructive it is to competitiveness, cost structures, all kinds of things. Okay, we'll get to that. Then there's something else that I cannot fully remember, but basically it's like, when you combine insider trading and lobby and all this type of stuff, how people in DC get so rich, right? Especially, if you're in Congress and stuff like that. And again, this circles back to Oliver Anthony, rich men north of Richmond. And I think it's very timely. But we also need to layer on another huge news story that broke over the weekend. And that is Attorney General of Texas State Attorney General Ken Paxton was acquitted in the impeachment stuff in the Senate. And that was devastating. And his lawyers did a massive takedown of the Bush family and GOPE and Texas politics. And Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick just laid it out. People are like, oh, he had a tirade. He's a lieutenant governor. He crushed you dudes. And when you look at, and then there's this thing, this is bizarre. And I'm not even sure exactly how to approach this with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., with this armed person. Like it was, that is, you want to, Oliver Stone may be on the case at this point. Like that was a very weird, strange situation. And he still, I believe, does not have Secret Service protection. What are we doing? Okay. Very weird. You don't want people to, that's a whole weird thing. But also we have to talk about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. talking about maybe that the DNC is a rigged game, quote unquote. My paraphrase, hypothetical, rough paraphrase, my opinion. And he may need to run third party. Let me tell you something. If they're worried about Cornel West running third party, they should be deathly afraid of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. running third party. I mean, as a political analyst, as a political expert, I can't see any possible way that Joe Biden, President Biden, Biden's already down against Trump right now, like 3-4 points. How in the heck can you beat a dude that's polling at like 20%? And you can see what would happen. Biden will try to duck the debates. Kennedy and Trump will have debates. They'll get massive ratings. If the networks don't carry them, they'll go on Twitter, now X. They'll do live. They'll do their own thing. It doesn't matter. Truth Social, whatever it is, Rumble. I mean, dude, both of them very telegenic, both of them very charismatic, both of them very engaging, both of them have way more energy. You got Robert F. Kennedy Jr. out there repping weights at Venice Beach, pumping it up, shirt off, looking buff, looking tough. You've got Trump out there, Trump National Golf. I mean, which Trump National? We got so many of them, whether it's in Doral, whether it's in Bedminster, whatever, hitting the golf ball, doing his thing. Maybe he goes to Scotland. It doesn't matter. And you're gonna Biden looking for ice cream on some beach somewhere. I don't know. No disrespect to President Biden, but forget about me. I'm not trying to be a punk. I'm a talk show host. I'm just we're being entertaining here, but we're also being enlightening as well. But it's not about John D. Villarreal, who's nobody, right? Other than a host here on Newstalk 1040. We love that. We love the audience. We love you. But as I say, I'm nobody. I just know a lot of people know a lot of things. You've got 70% of Democrats, bro. Is it 70%? I think it might be. I may be wrong. Paul can correct me. There's 70% of the people out there. Maybe it's everybody. Maybe it's Democrats. Do not want Biden to run again. I mean, you have a situation right here that is cataclysmic. I mean, everything has changed. They say a week is a lifetime in politics. So much has stayed the same and so much has changed in 2 weeks. What I've been saying has really come to pass. And I'm just talking about Trump. It's all about Trump. The GOP, Karl Rove, Bush-affiliated people have become exposed, whether it's in Florida, DeSantis campaign, potentially, allegedly, in my opinion. I don't know anything. I'm just speculating. I'm just seeing news reports. I just saw, Jeb Bush with a glowing, assessment of Ron DeSantis. You've got Karl Rove out there with his whiteboard somewhere, scribbling something. Nothing's adding up. You've got out there Ken Paxton. Weird coincidence, and Busby said it better than I did. Amazingly, these charges against, if I remember correctly, against Attorney General Ken Paxton, and then surprise, surprise, George P. Bush. Oh, let's just reinstate the law license and get things going for Attorney General. People are sick of it. Now I've got to put this on the table, and I'm losing my voice. I'm going to throw over to Paul in here in a second. Bill Gurley, a huge venture capitalist. If you're not in the scene, you may not know the name. That's totally fine. It's okay. But let me just tell you, he was with Benchmark Capital. So Benchmark Capital did I got to look it up. It's just insane levels of investments, like returns that were insane, and I think it was Facebook. There's just so many different things. It's not even funny that they're one of the big ones. They're one of the big ones, not the absolute super duper duper duper. I mean, but I don't, dude, it's like, we'd be splitting hairs. Okay. When I think of the absolute maximum top three, I'm thinking of Kleiner, I'm thinking of Sequoia. Then you can start picking it after that. But when you're talking about companies that are funded, you're talking about 1-800-Flowers, you're talking about AOL, you're talking about Cetra Networks, you're talking about, there's so many, it's not even funny, right? Marin Software, Metcalf, Palm Inc., ResearchGate, Seeking Alpha, Zipcar, Zillow, Yelp, WeWork. I mean, just a lot, Snapchat, just a lot, okay? So it's a big kind of firm that's very, very successful, and they've done a lot of things. And I think there's more than that. I'm quite sure of that. Including some really huge names that I'm just somehow missing right now. Okay, that's fine. So he does this presentation. It's called 2,851 miles. I'm going to try to do this some level of justice. very, very quickly. But he kind of talks about Tropos networks and how they were trying to do Wi-Fi at the city level, and how he said, "Oh, I'm going to meet with some." Finally had to meet. I didn't want to deal with Washington, and this is what I try to tell everybody. I was around with the OGs of Silicon Valley, okay, of when it was really a thing, when it was really a big deal. Well, it was still a big deal. I'm not saying that quite right. When it was Elon Musk, okay, when he was first getting started, when it was all about what, libertarian, what can you do? What are you working on? And let's go. Collaborative. Nobody cared who you voted for. It didn't matter. You listen to some of these big time VCs, you can tell they're in my opinion, they sound a little libertarian, maybe even a little bit conservative, whatever. And, and now it's become so crazy and so woke and so insane and so ridiculous. I've been trying to connect the dots for people. And I think this podcast, this presentation did a great job of connecting the dots in a lot of ways that people wouldn't think about, right? And so he talks about that he met with this congressperson, and basically it's like, okay, he wanted to, he'll fly. He thought, no, the congressperson will fly out to you. I was like, whoa. He thought he had to go to Washington because there's regulation for the wireless internet. And they're like, and I don't want to spoil the talk, but basically it's like, it went from just him to, hey, do you have 5 or 10 friends? And hey, can they write checks? And well, do you have more? And what about their spouses? And it became like, it seemed like it sounded like a little bit more of a fundraising thing. And then he went with them and we realized that, like, dude, as much as whatever we were doing, we're nothing. We're small fish. I found out that I was nobody in that scheme, right? Not scheme. Let me revise that. In that situation. Now, it'll make more sense here in a second. Stay with me. And what he talked about is how regulation captures. You have regulatory capture. I'm trying to say two things at once. Regulatory capture. Okay. And you can see this in healthcare. You can see this in telco. You can see this in so many different things, right? And what that basically means is the bureaucracy in Washington is so big and so powerful that it makes, and this is my old law and economics coming out, and I could really shred on all this stuff, and I just wish my voice was there. So I'm like, oh, I know all, like, this is my jam right here. And it's, let's see, did I lose it here? Are we back? Can you hear me? Are we back? I hope we're back. Okay, we're having some technical difficulty. I hope we're back here. Let me know if we're good now. I was rolling on this. Okay, we're back. Okay, let me just pick it up again. When you have a big bureaucracy, apologize to the Newstalk 1040 audience out there. We're doing the simulcast. We're trying to do everything good. So what the premise of it is this: as government gets bigger, as bureaucracy gets bigger, it becomes more and more important. And you think about Dr. Fauci, NIH, CDC, HHS, all these things, right? And the ones that it's most important to are the industries that are regulated, right? So Wall Street cares a lot about Security and Exchange Commission, and pharmaceutical companies care a lot about the FDA, and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, we all care about them, but those people have people specifically designed to be experts in it, be lobbyists in it, whatever. Like, I used to be with a law firm called Wilson Sons Syndicate versus Rosati, WSGR. It was the best at the time, in my opinion, when I was there in Silicon Valley. And in Silicon Valley, it was, hey, we did all kinds of different stuff, but a lot of VC fundings and IPOs and M&A, whatever. Well, guess what? They got a branch in Washington, D.C. And guess what a lot of that branch does in Washington, D.C.? They use some patent words, whatever. Regulatory work, player. Okay. And they're not uncommon. There's tons of people like that. Okay. So what Gurley does is it goes on in this talk, and I'm trying to summarize this very, very quickly, but there's a lot of backstory that audience would understand that I need to bring everybody up to speed here. And that basically he's saying that, listen, the people whose billions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars or whatever is on the line, they care the most. And what are they going to do? They're going to put their money to work. So here he is as a VC in Silicon Valley thinking he's hot stuff. And he is. And he is. And he was. But in that game, the Washington, D.C. game, with whatever little checks him and his spouses and the friends, whatever all, got together, is nothing. Because he pointed out like Comcast, and he talking about the different lobbyists. This is one guy here, some big super powerful dude that was a Comcast lobbyist, and just how he's like big time, and just the money that is being put to work it's insane. And then he has a quote there, which is exactly right in my opinion. And again, it's the law and economics here, and I can't remember exactly who said this. But basically, it's like it was from this famous dude, and I'm getting a little bit off right now. But basically, the quote is this, quote, "As a rule, regulation is acquired by the industry and is designed and operated primarily for its benefit." Okay? Now, I'm going to pause this. I'm going to take it aside. I'm going to come back. It doesn't make sense. I'm going to make this all make sense as fast as possible. There's other things about how many people if you look at Obamacare, Nancy Pelosi famously said, Speaker Pelosi at the time, we have to pass a bill to know what's in it. Do you understand that a lot of Congress people do not write the bills? That basically the bills are a lot of times are sitting there and drafted by lobbyists that are influenced by industry, and these bills are ready and waiting to go. Ready and waiting to go. Okay, whenever a new administration comes in or power changes hands, whatever, the Democrats have theirs, the Republicans have theirs, right? And Russell Brand was talking about, we're going to talk about Russell Brand, he's in the news too, about how like military industrial complex, pharmaceutical industrial complex, big energy, big pharma, big education, big agriculture, all these types of things. And so those industries care a lot. Agriculture cares a ton about tariffs and ethanol stuff and all those types of things, right? I mean, every time they go, Iowa, got to talk about ethanol, right? And pharmaceutical companies and on down the list. So what this is saying basically is these agencies that are supposed to regulate these industries actually become captured by these industries because those industries care so much and they have big money to deploy. And if you get paid listen, how do I say this? You think about how much money these people make, right? How is it that you serve in government? Government doesn't pay that much, but then all of a sudden, you sit on a board, you go out of government, you sit on a board, or you're a lobbyist, or you do whatever, and all of a sudden, you make $10 million, $15 million, $8 million. How do they get so rich? It's a revolving door between tech, government, agriculture, big business, government, Fortune 500, government, Wall Street, government. Right? It's a revolving door. And what does that do? That enriches the politicians. So you've got the industries that are dumping money in it, politicians that are passing laws, lobbyists and industries that are writing the laws, a revolving door to get yourself rich. You also know that for a time, and I don't know exactly what it is now, it wasn't illegal to do insider trading. So you're going to pass a bill. It's going to help industry. All of a sudden, you can trade on that industry. I mean, there's so many ways to get rich, and who loses? So the ones that win, Oliver Anthony, Richmond, north of Richmond, everybody else loses, player. This is coming home right now. And all these stories, most of them relate to this. Whether we're talking about Ken Paxton or Trump or all this type of stuff, right? And so then he goes through this thing, and I apologize for taking the time, but I really want to lay this out. And he's like, yeah. This it never happened. We never got the city Wi-Fi, and it was supposed to help people in broadband and everything like that. And I thought I knew, Schoolhouse Rock, how the bills become law. That's not how it becomes law. And guess who has broadband wireless internet now? Comcast, AT&T, the big players. And they had the Telco Industry Act of 1996, and that was supposed to increase competition and Bill Clinton and get everybody going. And I said no. And it used to be when I was in the Valley, I had all kinds of telco stuff, of investments and VCs and technologies, and they shows a graph. Basically, the top 4 leading telecom providers' market share was about 50%. 5 years later, 5 years, just 5 years after the passage of that Telco Act in 1996, right? The law that was maybe potentially influenced by, or I'm not gonna allege anything, but again, like, if you follow Bill Gurley's logic, 5 years later, they owned 85% of the market. I mean, what the heck happened to our antitrust laws, right? And is that good for competition? Is that good for pricing? And then they showed investment. Is that good for technology and development? No. VC money into telecom equipment in the millions, massive spikes, right? In, around 96, 97, 98, 99, 2001, 2000 and 2000. Now, granted, there was a tech crash. All right. I was there in Silicon Valley when that first tech crash. But now you look at now, he's like, hey, you want to interview a telco VC? It's no problem because they're out of a job now. There's nobody's investing in these things anymore. So this is really, really hurting competition. So he goes on and just kind of details these things, and he goes through specific examples about like how there's this one lady who was a CEO in charge of Epic Software, I think. Never heard of them. Most people haven't. And they're something out of, I think, Wisconsin. Obama funder somehow got some kind of, I don't know what, some kind of advisory. I don't know. He details it in I don't want to be wrong. Somehow connected to some kind of, something with advisory of Obama administration, something. I think. I may be remembering wrong. Look, I would refer you to the presentation. Well, surprise, surprise, as part of the Obamacare, Affordable Care Act, you have to have, healthcare companies have to have software. Oh, amazing. And they pay doctors to use it. And then they pay to try it. And then to buy it and then to use it and whatever. And then all of a sudden you have to have all these certain elements in the software. And it just happens to match up with what these, I guess what do you want to call it? The gist of it is, the sense of it is, I'm not alleging anything, is that it kind of seemed to be pretty similar to what Epic software product already was. And yet then the competitors, all of a sudden the DOJ starts going after the competitors and finding them, like not a little bit of money, a ton of money, crazy amounts of money, like hundreds of millions of dollars, stuff like that. Like, yeah, Electronic Health Records Act pays $57.25 million, pay $155 million. Pays $145 million. I mean, it's crazy. And again, I'm not alleging anything. I'm going off of what I believe was said in the talk. I may be wrong. I will refer you to the talk. It's all in Summit. It's on YouTube right now. Bill Gurley presents 2,851 miles. So you start getting the sense of it. So basically, and then he talks about COVID. And he talks about the tests. Do you know that there's only 3 companies that were allowed to do these rapid tests? And I can't remember all of them. I think it was Abbott and 2 other ones in the U.S. In Germany, there's like 75 companies. And surprise, surprise, the price here in the U.S. was like $30. The price in Germany, it's like $2 to $7. Do you understand how this is going? Do you get it? I mean, are we going to actually have a functioning constitutional republic here, or are we all clowns? Is it only going to be the rich men north of Richmond that run everything? I mean, this isn't me. This isn't John D. Villarreal on his radio show here in Tampa, the great Newstalk 1040 AM. This is a top VC, impeccable credentials, who's detailing this. And they said it was the best talk that they've ever had in this conference. These other top names, like he just shreds them, dude. And he goes through example after example of how bad this is, how much it's, and then they show the more regulated industry, the more pricing has gone up. Education, energy, healthcare, real estate. I mean, it's not a shock. Deregulation, regulated industries, prices go down. So I'm not saying that we don't need regulation, but and he said the reason why Silicon Valley was so great for so long is because here's the punchline, we were 2,851 miles away from DC, and he used some other colorful language. Do you get it? We need to wake up. So much more to talk about. That sets the stage for the rest of the show. Stay tuned. 5 short minutes. We're going to be back on the John D. Villarreal radio show here on Newstalk 1040 AM, Greater Tampa Bay Area, and live on LinkedIn right now and YouTube. See you in a second.
Recently, we asked you, the listeners, what you like about Newstalk 1040.
Talk radio is cool because
Okay.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me, John D. Villarreal, here live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. Not sure my wife was in here making fun of me. I'm not sure. I put the microphone on mute. Apologize to that for my live viewers. She loves to make fun of me. But we're not making fun of you. You are the great audience here on Newstalk 1040 AM. Greater Tampa Bay area, and we're talking about some super serious stuff here. And this is a very big show. It's a great show, and I love it. And you know what? I love that because we keep it real. We keep it real. I'm not gonna say like Oliver Anthony, whatever, but we try. I mean, I actually grew up relatively close, or we understand that area, the Greater Appalachia area. I don't want to lean too hard on that. We talked about the background before and everything. We understand those people. We're also joined by Paul at Villarreal here. We'll bring him in a second. I just want to say a few more things that I was thinking about. Okay. And we talked about Bill Gurley's speech at the All-In Summit and how he was talking about regulatory capture, and how Washington is just flowing just with buckets of money, and how the money that he raised, I think it was $120,000 or whatever for this congressman that came in there, some fundraising, and it was just a drop in the bucket. Drop in the ocean. Wasn't a drop in the bucket. Drop in the ocean was nothing. And how devastating that is, and how bills become law, and how bills are basically written by industry and lobbyists. Now, you got to follow with me. You got to stay to the end, because there's so much things. I'm going to try to tie it together as fast as possible. You want to understand what's going on. It's not about left and right, player. I mean, yes, sure. But when you have someone like Trump coming in there, right? And whatever you think about Trump, and here on the Newstalk 1040 audience, probably there's a lot of people that are Republicans and going to vote for Trump. Great. And apologize, I have to kind of sip on some lemon water here to keep my voice somewhat together. I'll leverage Paul here in a second. But whatever you think about Trump, what you have to understand is this. The level of vitriol against Trump, could it possibly, I'll phrase it as a question, have to do with Trump disrupting that lobbying, money flowing, all that type, like let's talk about Ukraine. For years, when Trump was in office, no major wars, right? Now, how much money have we sent to Ukraine versus Maui, versus East Palestine, versus student loans? And listen, let's talk about student loans for a second. The payments are going to resume, and people are like, "Oh, you took the loans." Okay. That's fair. Well, first of all, full disclosure, I've got a lot of student loans. Wife's got a lot of student loans. So, okay, I'll put that out there. Very transparent. All right. And I always expected that, pay it off. And of course, I mean, I've been paying on my law school loan. You know what I mean? And that, thank goodness, is almost gone. I don't want to get into my personal stuff here, but I'm just trying to be straight up with the audience. I think that's critical. And it's a lot of money, and I get it. But the problem of it, here's two problems. Who was crying and complaining about how much money we spent with Ukraine? How much money we spent with the banks? It's never like, oh, we don't have enough money for the banks. We don't have enough money for Wall Street. We don't have money for PPP loans. COVID destroyed everybody, including students, right? Like myself and my wife, who just got out, tried to get a job. When we graduated right when COVID was and so did millions of other people. So you think about that recruitment class. If you were a doctor, the doctor a little bit different. If you're a lawyer, if you were, but all of them, any of the professions, a dentist is different, right? Dentist wasn't, a lot of people weren't going to see the dentist. There's people coming out of dental school, $300,000, $500,000, $500,000 in debt. I didn't realize that. You understand that dentists are some of the highest rates of unhappiness with the work and stress and all that, stuff that goes along with it, dude. I mean, this situation, pandemic, which potentially came out of a lab, if you're according to the reports, I'm not alleging anything, no conspiracies, but if you look at the reports, the new reports, because what was deemed a conspiracy theory before is now all of a sudden, well, maybe kind of, hey, it's like it's like the UFO stuff. You're crazy, Project Blue Book. Now, oh yeah, we've got some video over here. Maybe, I don't know, maybe, we're not sure, but possibly. Okay. All right. The stories keep changing at such a rapid pace, it's unbelievable. That's why this whole misinformation, how about this, player? Let people hear the information. That's what freedom of speech is. It's an amazing thing, isn't it? It's the First Amendment. And then let them decide. I trust the audience. The audience is pretty smart. That's why you have to have multiple sources. That's why you have to have critical thinking. That's why it's important to be educated, to look at different things. But anyway, here's the point. It makes the same point as Bill Gurley. Yes, you take a debt, you pay it back. We get it. But at the same time, when the if the deck is stacked and the entire economy is shut down, if everyone said that you can't get a decent job if you don't go to school, but then the tuition rates are through the roof, multiple factors of inflation, over time, and there's people that get out with a degree in underwater basket weaving over 6 figures of debt, and they are destroyed, dude. Destroyed. I think it was one of the only debts you couldn't discharge in bankruptcy. And these are kids, 18 years old, 19 years old, 20 years old, 23 years old. They have no, clue. But hey, the banks, hey, the donors. This is what I'm saying. You can't have a situation where regular people can't win and certain people can't lose. And that's kind of what Bill Gurley was saying, in my opinion, with his speech from a different angle. And then we can also look at that in politics. If you don't come up through the system, if you're not saying, or wokeism, or fill in the blank, cancel culture. If you're not, here's the bottom line. If you're not towing the party line, you're punked. You're punked. Is that democracy? Is that the democracy, quote unquote, we're saving? What are we doing here? And I'll throw a couple things on a couple other fuels on the fire. UAW strike. Now, listen, I'm not like the super union dude and everything, but here's the deal. These, the Democratic Party and President Biden are supposed to be so pro-union. Yay. Okay, cool. And I came from union country, Washington, Pennsylvania, right? Steel mills, coal mines, all that type of stuff, right? Okay, cool. And then you have a situation where with the big push for EV and the Inflation Reduction Act, and these a lot of times these bills, it's almost the exact opposite, in my opinion, sometimes. Well, guess what was in there? Some people said that was really the Green New Deal. Well, guess what? With this super hard push, and I'm in automotive, I know a lot about automotive for EVs, which, listen, I have a hybrid. It's cool. I like it. But I also have a situation where I've got very accessible charging, and I have a situation where it fits with my lifestyle, okay? If I was doing long commutes and stuff like that, maybe it'd be different. It doesn't matter. I don't want to get sideswiped. The point of it is that I think only 7% of the market wants EVs. There's been pushback by the market on EVs, but guess what? EVs have been mandated. So what do we say about Bill Gurley with regulation, right? It helps the incumbents. It's captured. I mean, all this stuff is going to really, really help, Tesla a lot. But also, guess what? Where a lot of the EVs, the batteries, and raw materials and everything manufactured, China, right? Okay, and what is it doing to the UAW workers at like the big three? It's something like 40% they're going to lose like 40% of their pay or jobs or both, something like that, which obviously is going to be devastating for union dues. It's kind of sort of like what's going on in Hollywood with the CGI and the AI and stuff like that. Oh, guess what? You can be in one movie or do one small little part that we'll pay you whatever. Then we'll just use your image. We'll just use some AI. We don't have to pay anymore. Look what happened. They were able to kind of put some stuff together for Carrie Fisher after she passed for Star Wars, and the writers and the excuse me, and the actors and writers are like, what? That's what I'm saying. We're rapidly approaching a situation that only works for the super elite, and everyone else are basically like punked out or serfs or whatever. And I can go on and on. Real estate's frozen up. How many people can invest in real estate now? And there's been talk about, World Economic Forum, well, in the future, people own nothing and they'll like it or whatever. Okay, well, whatever you think of that. Again, no conspiracy theories, anything like that. But then you look at, and who said this? I want to give the right props to it and the quote to it. And I can't remember right off the top of my head. And I know it's right there. But State Street, BlackRock, and there's one other that they own so much of the S&P 500, and the private equity coming in, cash buyers. And I think this was Robert F. Kennedy Jr. talked about this, but other people have talked about this too, are buying up so many single family homes. Can't compete with that. It's just pricing out first time home buyers, which, oh, by the way, are a lot of students with tons of student debt. You see the pattern? This is so bad. So here we are distracted by bread and circuses with which group are you in, or you said this, or I'm going to cancel you, or whatever the avatar or the shiny object of the day is. Meanwhile, we have a situation. I have a 6-year-old daughter. I am concerned that she will have no future in this country if I don't make it super big. If you don't, it's like Dragon's Lair, that old video game, or Mario, or insert whatever. The floor is falling. If you don't get to a safe place before it all crumbles, you're done. This is not the America that we were promised by this Constitution. When you get elected Congress, it's almost like winning the lottery, player. Now, I have a couple, and I don't want to misspeak, and I don't want to be, whatever, but I've got a couple invites out to some local Congress people, and I think they're going to come on. If they come on, they come on. If they don't, they don't. You know what? I respect them. Great. I think they've done a great job. Great. I'm not going to name the names. Great. If they don't, I don't care. It doesn't, dude, I mean, I think they're awesome. I've been around politics a long time. I don't think we're going to learn anything unbelievably scintillating, because I get it. Way better than most people. That's why I've been backed up. I was a superstar for my level in politics, because I understand things. I'm an expert in politics. I don't want to get into that. It's not about me. But just trust me with that. Let's go with it. But part of why I backed off is because it's just, there's so many narcissists in there. There's so many megalomaniacal people. So it's, me. And it's like, dude, you're supposed to be a public servant. My dad was a public servant. My brother's a public servant. At some point, maybe I'll be a public servant, stuff like that. And it's in some ways, I can't even necessarily blame individual members, because the system will do it to you. And they'll tell you that. Like, yeah, I tried to do X, Y, and Z, and they took me off the committees, and the leadership did this. Look in the Senate with Mitch McConnell. Look, all of them. Why aren't they retiring? I feel bad. But show me any other candidate that, besides Trump, that right now that can win on the Republican side, that can try to address any of this. We had a little bit of fade there. Apologize for that. I'm going to bring in Paul Villarreal right now. I've set up a lot, and we have so much to talk about. Ken Paxton. There's that continues the story. If you haven't seen that, please see that. Please see Governor Patrick's closing remarks, and definitely see the final closing statements and remarks and argument from Busby, who excoriated and scorched, destroyed, in my opinion, the Bush-affiliated Republicans there. How ridiculous it is. And when you think about, Russia hoax, Ukraine hoax, impeachments, indictments, everything they've done to Trump seemed kind of familiar. We've been down this road before. It's the same type of deal. And hey, guess what, Governor? And the same people are hanging around, not same people. Similarly politically aligned, in my opinion, potentially, possibly, I'm not alleging anything. The Bush names somewhere, we had Jeb Bush having a nice little things to say about Governor DeSantis, and we've got the Bush name being brought up in Texas. So weird. And then we've got, what's going on with Fox News and Trump. It's craziness. Does this all start making sense to you now? Do you understand it's not about ideology? It is about power and money. Paul, I want to bring you in right now. What are your comments on this? You've been listening patiently for about 45 minutes here. I know you're so deep into this. We got to talk about Christian Welker and the Meet the Press interview. Bring me your reactions right now and bring me up to speed on what you've been seeing in your research.
Well, look, just to talk about, and then hi out there for the Newstalk 1040 audience, just to kind of talk about what you said on all this. You said a lot of good things. There are many people who feel like you do, who are just kind of just not interested in politics or just become sickened with the whole process. Now, as you said, you have been very involved as a candidate, done different things. I think a big part of what had happened for you personally was that you didn't want to play the game. You didn't want to go through all the hoops. And
I'm not a sellout. I'm not a sellout, and you know that about me.
Sellout.
I'm not a sellout. If I was a sellout, I could have been, in my opinion, I could have been rich and retired many times over in many different endeavors. And at a certain point, I'll be real quick, Paul. You got to look in the mirror and say, who are you about? When you look at your kids, what are you about? There's people out there. I mean, if you can make money all kinds of weird, strange, illegal ways that I would never do. But that's not that. That's immoral. That's illegal. That's unethical. Right? What are we about? Is it all about? And people talk about faith and stuff like that. I don't want to get too much into that. Everyone's got their own. We respect everybody. But look, is it all about power and money? Is that all that matters? Getting over clout, views on TikTok. I'm all about social media. I love that type of stuff. But people have to get real. I came from nothing, as they say in that quote in the Bible, from dust to dust, player. What are you going to do and what are you going to stand for? And how are you going to help people and how are you going to move things forward? I want to create, and all of this is silliness, because as Bill Gurley said, if you have a system that only benefits a certain limited amount of people, it is very inefficient and it's going to hurt society. If you have a system that allows people to be innovative and competitive and it creates the most opportunity, the most upper mobility, and it also creates the greatest social good and the greatest products and GDP and everything like that. And that's law and economics. That's what I study. How do you make things as efficient as possible? We're for peace, freedom, love, opportunity, equality for everybody. But if you don't get real representation, and this isn't just U.S., this is global. We're seeing it all over the place. We're seeing Nigel Farage was debanked, allegedly, in Europe, UK, for being for Brexit. Shut down his banks, wouldn't let him bank, bro. I mean, you couldn't go outside in certain places. I mean, do you understand how insane this is going? There's a guy on YouTube. I'll stop after this, Paul. Nomad Capitalist talking about having multiple places in multiple, cities to be able to people the 3-day rule of it. When it gets bad, 3 days. I mean, people are talking about, leaving states, leaving countries. That's scary, bro. What do we do? I mean, people have to get your hands on it around this. We cannot be distracted by the shiny objects. Whatever they want us to talk about now, whether it's abortion or whatever, very important issue. But what I'm saying is everything's on the table in this election. Don't be distracted on anyone, thing. Everything's on the table. If you want to sign up for, cancel culture, more of the same or worse, if you want a policy that starts walking us down to socialism, maybe someday we do look a little closer to China in terms of our structure or economic. And again, the world it's becoming more, more with technology and communication and leaders going to conferences and stuff like that. Again, regulatory capture, you put that in a political model. It's the same thing. People want to get power and money. If you're a lot of times, if you're a politician, it could be sometimes, depends on the level, an audition for whatever role, a lot of those people want to be famous. As the great Rush Limbaugh used to say, politics is Hollywood for ugly people. So it's a bigger part. That's his quote, not mine. And it's power and money. So the salary of a congressperson is, I think, $170. Good money. Not crazy money in DC by any stretch. So how do these people get millions and millions and millions of dollars if they didn't have it already? I'll stop there, Paul. Go ahead.
Well, and just coming back to just kind of going off of that point, one of the things that's kind of ironic is that it seems like some of the people who are wealthier, like President Trump, like perhaps Vivek Ramaswamy, they're less captured. They're
so
less
weird.
captured.
It's
They
kind
are
of
less
weird,
held
right?
down.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not the super PAC puppets, as Vivek would say. And so those individuals, in my opinion, a lot of times they're more able to help the common man because they don't have to answer to all these different donors and lobbyists. And so it can work out better with those people. Look, and as you said, and again, it's not about us. This is about everybody. We have gone through this. And I think you get somebody like an Oliver Anthony. He's disaffected from politics. Why? Because he knows it's about the rich men north of Richmond. And so it's easy to get burnt out about it. But as you said, this election is absolutely critical because I do think the trajectory is a little bit concerning right now. And if you have regulatory capture, there's kind of an analogy in social world, which is if you're having cancel culture and that type of thing, that's its own regulation. So it becomes even tighter control.
Right.
The more control that you have, in my opinion, the easier it is for powerful people to keep power and get more power.
Let me say this super quick. We're coming up on a break. You know what else they're looking at now? Guess what they're looking at now? And someone else said this too. AI. And now AI, we need to regulate it. We need to this and that. Okay. And that may have been in Gurley's speech. I can't remember. And AI is tied to it's tied to what? Software. You may not be able to pretty soon, because all these things are going after AI. I think Gurley was saying this. Pretty soon, you may not even be able to do software without getting the blessing of DC bureaucrats. Do you understand? That is the heart of Silicon Valley. Like, we're ruining everything. Politics is ruining everything. Like, wake up. And that's why do you think I had such a negative reaction to a politician leading a quote-unquote tech hub in Miami? Do we understand? Who then went on to run for president and somehow got a lot of money in the last 3 years. Does it sound like, and I'm not alleging anything, I'm just trying to, my opinion, recollection of news reports. Does it all start, are we seeing a larger meta pattern here? Wake up, dude. People talk about like red pill and all. I mean, dude, I don't know what pill this is. I mean, people, star pill, I don't know, dude. Like, I've been, Paul, and you know me obviously, I've known this stuff for a long time, and it's sad, but it's actually good that people are finally starting to wake up. You want to talk about woke? This is the real woke. This is the real woke about what's really going on and the power and money. And if we don't collectively come together and hopefully get some, it's not going to be one election. It's not going to be one person. It's going to be, believe me, you know, and Ben Franklin had said this. What do you have when in the constitutional thing, when they made that, hey, what form of government we have? A constitutional republic, if you can keep it. If you can keep it. We're always one generation away from, you know, socialism or communism or something like that. People that want power, it's a 24/7, 365, every year type of deal. So we got to work together. If we want to be individuals, this is the land of the free, home of the brave. Hey, you're listening to John D. Villarreal radio show here and live on LinkedIn and Facebook. Well, not Facebook right now, and YouTube. We will see you next hour. Lots more to talk about. And Paul's going to jump in here too. We're going to talk about those interviews, polls, all kinds of stuff. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Okay, we got about a minute or two till the show starts again. So let's just stand by.
1040.
Back and forth.
About 30 seconds out of the show.
Newstalk 1040.
Years of
Okay, we're going to continue with what we talked about last hour and introduce some new stuff as well.
.org to find out how to get.
Hey, what's up? News Talk 1040, John D. Villarreal, John D. Villarreal Radio Show. Also live on YouTube and LinkedIn today. Facebook, we're going to have to repost it. So much to talk about. Unbelievable. My voice is a little bit out. Apologize for that. Just getting over a little bit of sickness. A lot of people are feeling that sickness as well. And we can talk about that too. It's like, oh, hey, more masks, huh? And listen, I'm actually not making any comment on that. Not a medical professional, and we want everybody to be safe and healthy out there for sure, absolutely. But we were talking about Bill Gurley's amazing speech at the All In conference, where he basically punked out, politics and regulation and the process and basically how it's killing innovation and it's raising prices. We weave that into, what's going on with Trump and Ukraine and student loans and just so many different things, and how bills become laws and how they're written by lobbyists and pushed by industry and the money flowing and rich men north of Richmond and all those things. And I can't highlight everything, but basically what Bill Gurley was saying was, and I think this is important, was basically regulation benefits the incumbents. And if you look at more regulated industries like hospitals, college tuitions, college textbooks, medical care, child care, very regulated, costs have exploded. Things that are not as regulated, cell phones, software, toys, television, costs have decreased, which you would expect with competition and efficiencies of technology and productivity over time. And so now we're facing a really serious situation where, RFK Jr. is saying that the DNC, if I remember right, the DNC system is rigged. We've got Donald Trump sitting there with 4 indictments, although a lot of these are starting to unravel, in my opinion, potentially. We'll go to Paul for that, latest updates. We have Ken Paxton, where they had him under indictment in this trial, and he got acquitted of all of it. And it looked, those crosses, it was looking they were getting destroyed, in my opinion. It looked so bad for the accusers of Ken Paxton. It was unbelievable. And listen, I do need to put an aside here real quick before I forget, because I know I will forget. We have too many other things to get to. There's a story about Congresswoman Boebert in the movie theater and stuff like that. Listen, I'm going to keep it super brief. I don't follow her too much. I don't follow some of the some of the various Congress people, some of the firebrands, whatever, Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm not, it's just I don't know. It's shorthand. I'm not alleging that either. Not in my district, in Colorado, whatever. Don't care who you date. Don't care about, if you're getting affectionate with someone. I don't care about any of that at all. But you shouldn't be vaping. Especially, nobody should be vaping in a movie theater with kids, just like you shouldn't be smoking in a movie theater with kids. That's not cool. And I don't know what was said. I don't know what happened. I saw the security tape. I have no idea what was said on the tape. But if you're acting like, do you know who I am, and big time in it, And, having a good time and talking during the movie, we've all been in there when people do that. I mean, I'm not going to make too much of that. But I think the main thing for me is like, look, don't be vaping or smoking in a theater with kids. That's just, or anybody, but definitely, especially kids. That's just really not cool. And, you're supposed to be a public servant and not big timing people. And I don't know what happened there. That's really all I have to say about that at this time. Paul, come on in here. Let's talk about what I said before in the first hour, but then let's also bring it forward because we have so much more to talk about. Meet the press. I think Trump crushed Kristen Welker, and it was like she was interrupting him. He said that she was trying to put words in his mouth, trying to fact check him on the fly. It just was silly and really crazy. I mean, so a lot of things going on here. And also, where's the excuse me? Where's the update on Maui? Bring us up to speed on what we're talking about right now, Paul.
Yeah, that's a good question. Where is the information on Maui? And we'll talk about that in a second. So this weekend was very important for President Trump and kind of the MAGA Trump coalition. Started out Friday with President Trump giving two speeches in Washington, D.C. One was to an organization called the Concerned Women for America, and the other was to the Family Research Council and the summit that they were having there. Both of them are faith-based or faith-driven organizations. The speech that he gave was pretty similar, just focusing on what he's done in terms of helping the faith community, how he's driven things. I thought they were both really good. I thought the second speech was particularly excellent. Really liked how he closed it out. And then, of course, going into Saturday with the Ken Paxton impeachment. You've already laid that out pretty well. As you mentioned, the attorney for Ken Paxton, I believe his name is Tony Busby, he said at some point during his closing remarks, I think, that this is the end of the Bushes or the Bush era.
He did say that. He did say that in Texas.
Yes, he did say that. It's been generally thought, I mean, again, we're not there, we don't know, but it's been generally thought that the people who were pushing this behind the scenes to force out Ken Paxton were allies of or friends with, or however you want to say it, the Bush family or the Bush faction in Texas. And what if people don't know what happened there in the last election for the Attorney General, Ken Paxton defeated George P. Bush.
Correct.
So obviously that
I believe he was the son of Jeb Bush.
That's right. Yes, I think that's correct. Yeah, I believe that's correct. So the Bushes at this period of time have none of their family members are in elected office. And I'm sure that might not sit really well with them. Of course, President Trump has kind of made part of his whole persona about ending the Bush era, so to speak. So you can imagine there's clashes going on here, and there's proxy contests, and that's kind of what this was in the minds of a lot of people. Ken Paxton being a Trump guy, and those opposing him being supposedly Bush people. And you mentioned earlier in the show the idea of George P. getting his law license reactivated. Well, I wonder why that would be. And Karl Rove, who of course is with Dean Bush, wrote, I want to say about a month ago in the Wall Street Journal that, Paxton's time as Attorney General is coming to an end. So, I mean, that was the prediction then, but of course it didn't work out. Not only did it not work out, none of the votes were particularly close. So I think that I want to say there's like 31 people in the Senate there or something like that. You had to get 10 people to acquit you so that you could pass each charge. And there were like 20 charges, 4 of which they just passed on. But none of the votes, all of the votes had at least 14 people to acquit. So this wasn't a cliffhanger. He easily went through. It wasn't even close. And there were people who thought, there was a period of time where it was like, okay, there's no chance he's getting convicted. Then there was like, oh my gosh, it might come down to one person. And then once the votes started coming in, it was no contest. So as you would imagine, President Trump took to Truth Social, was celebrating. Ken Paxton took to Twitter, was celebrating and was thankful. And look, I mean, this is it's a huge victory for the MAGA coalition, and a lot of people are very happy about it.
Well, and let me say,
moving on to Sunday.
Sorry, just super quick, because I want to put this on the table, so I think it'll make a lot of other things make sense. I said it the first hour, and we talked about that. But what I also want to talk about is who I think has done a very good job, particularly given it's past the role, the margins, it's a lot of stuff, is Speaker McCarthy. And Speaker McCarthy, I think, and you could say whatever, a lot, both sides have criticism of Speaker McCarthy. I think Speaker McCarthy's done a heck of a job. I've said that on LinkedIn. I've said that on the show. For the situation and all that. Is he perfect? No. I would take Speaker McCarthy every single day and Sunday over Leader McConnell. Okay, so let's just deal with that. But here's the thing: even if you think McCarthy is just a finger in the wind politician, a lot of politicians, and I'm not saying that. I'm saying even if you think that, I think McCarthy, Speaker McCarthy, has done a pretty darn good job. I'm sure he could do a better job. I don't know everything. I'm talking about the grand strokes of a policy from the outside, and all that. Okay. Particularly in regards to getting the facts out there, on a lot of things, that a lot of narratives that were constructed against the Republicans and the MAGA voters, and particularly in terms of lining things up for election 2024, which is extremely important. But that's all set up to say this. This is the pull quote right here. This is the important part. And some interview recently, there's two things that Speaker McCarthy did. One is he had some reporter. There's obviously his talking points now with Hunter and Biden. There's no evidence, no evidence, no evidence, no evidence, no evidence. Are you? I mean, how many? We got the laptop from Hack. We've got so many different things. Tony Bobolinsky. We've got bank statements. We got all kinds of. And Speaker McCarthy just crushed this reporter. And I think she's on my LinkedIn. She seems fine, and whatever. I'm not punking her out, but it's like, how on earth can you look at all these things and different fact patterns and say there's no evidence? Now, you may not be persuaded by the evidence. You may not believe the evidence. You may think the evidence doesn't lead back to Joe Biden, but no evidence? How do you set up so many shell companies? Why would you set up so many shell companies? How much money's flowing around? How does so many Biden find them? I don't know. I'm just asking questions. I'm not alleging anything. But that's number. I really apologize to the audience out there. I'm gonna shut up here in a second. I just have to for some decent radio. But the point is he stood strong on that. But the second point that's crucial that I want to put on the table. Loyalty pledge. With the loyalty pledge, they punked out the Republican Party of Florida. We're having some technical things here. So with those things happening, the point I want to leave you with, and get Paul in here, is I've been saying this for a long time, but now I think it's clear to so many people that Trump is going to be the nominee of the Republican Party. He's leading Joe Biden by a lot. There's been a lot of problems and a big court victory for Trump, if you will, in some of these cases. And Paul can bring up speed on that. And when you have McCarthy and Braun from Indiana endorsing Trump, along with the Florida congressional coalition, I mean, it's over. So what I'm saying is, when you look at these stories now, going forward, it's going to be Trump and it's going to be Biden. And I think you have to understand that in the greater scheme of things when we look at these things. So I just want to frame that. The primary effectively is over on the Republican side. I know no votes. Okay. He's 50 points up. Nobody else is close. Nikki Haley, I mean, Trump was laughing. It's over, dude. I'm not trying to punk anyone else out, but I mean, stop. Do you realize it's almost October? They're gonna be voting in January. Trump's not going to debates. What is going to happen between now and then? Nothing significant. I don't think this race will move even 10 points, let alone 50. Paul, I just wanted to frame that. And when you have Speaker McCarthy basically saying that, punking out DeSantis, who seemed to be kind of getting favorable treatment on Fox News, and guess what? Bush names were surrounding, allegedly, that campaign. And that campaign's burned through, I guess, 200 million? What are we doing here? So when we look at these things and think about going forward and how we position, the Republican Party has to unify. So when you see Ken Paxton and all these types of things, are we going to be playing games? Or are we going to get ready for 2024? Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, let me just say this too, because I think when we had technical issues there for a second, people didn't hear, the audience didn't hear what you were saying. It was that Kevin McCarthy was doing an interview, I believe it was with Maria Bartiromo on Sunday Morning Futures.
Correct.
And said essentially, look, I served with Governor DeSantis, and essentially he's not on Donald Trump's level. That's what he said. He flat out said that. And so it's pretty much, that's him, for all intents and purposes, saying it's over, time to jump on board President Trump.
100%.
I just wanted to say that because
That's
I don't
it.
think that technically we didn't hear that.
That's it. And that's what I'm saying that. That's coming from Kevin McCarthy, who was part of the Young Guns, who was touted with Eric Cantor, who was the Republican whip, and former Speaker Paul Ryan, who's now on the board of Fox News. I mean, that's coming from Kevin McCarthy. It's over. So are we going to still have more behind-the-scenes stuff with GOPE and the Bush Klan and the Republican Civil War, as quote-unquote, as I saw one article, I believe, about what happened to Ken Paxton? Are we going to get real? Because we got the UAW on strike. Bill Gurley, all the things we've been talking about. Are we going to get real for our future, for our children's future? It's Trump and it's Biden. That's where it is. I mean, at this point, right? Now, there's a lot more to talk about, but that was my message, Paul, that I took away. It's over. So now, with that in context, I want to hear about the polls. I want to hear about your take. I want to hear about this interview with Kristen Welker. Let's roll it out.
Yeah, look, the polls are, we just got a poll out yesterday, I believe it was, from Susquehanna, which is a good pollster. They're actually located here in Pennsylvania. They polled Michigan, and the split in the GOP side is 65 Trump, 18% DeSantis. It's over. It's not going to happen there. And in the general election, Trump's down 3 points to Biden, 46-43, and Biden is up 6 points on DeSantis, 48-42. So I've said it before online. I don't think that DeSantis could defeat Biden in the Rust Belt states, and I just don't see it. Biden still has, again, we've talked about this before, kind of the nostalgia appeal. Let's go to the Meet the Press interview, because that was a huge topic yesterday, as you would imagine. That's when it was held. I thought that President Trump did great in this interview, and what he did, and we both watched it, was this was Kristen Welker's first show as the host. So Trump goes on her first show, does the interview. Now, again, has 4 indictments and all these charges and everything, and, he's supposed to be ashamed and all these different things. Well, he just goes on. It's no big deal. It's just normal. So it goes on. He succeeds just by going on the interview. He's nice to Kristen Welker. He's asked all kinds of leading questions and this type of thing, but he only said what he wanted to say. When he didn't want to answer a question, he didn't answer it. He just directed it the way he wanted. And I thought maybe the biggest thing from an optics perspective was that she looked not great, because she kept interrupting him. She kept interrupting him,
Yeah, it was so bad.
Kept interrupting him. And it was terrible. And so he looked
And he
like,
called her out on it. He's like, "You're trying to put words in my mouth. You asked me a question. You won't even let me finish." And then it was egregious. I mean, and it nonstop.
It was, yeah. It was, I thought that he looked like the calm, calm person, and she didn't, which of course makes him look like he did well. And he did do well. And as you said, one of the things he said was, he made kind of a list of, hey, Joe Biden lies about this and he lied about this, da, da, da. And then she's like, well, let's talk about it. Let's keep it on let's talk about you. He's like, well, I would talk if you'd stop interrupting me. So he just was kind of like, he just did great in this interview. And it was such to the extent that online,
I also found,
the left basically.
Sorry, real quick. I also found that when he was, quote unquote, scoring points and doing really well, she wanted to immediately move off that and would say something to, or there's no evidence, or try to spin it or frame it, and then quickly the little track to get the little shot in and then move on to the next subject. But when he didn't want to talk about something, or he gave an answer that she didn't like, or wouldn't maybe fall into the trap, she wanted to talk about, it's like she would ask the same question like literally 4 or 5 different times. And it's like, wait a minute, I thought we didn't have time. We had to go to so much. But then he even called her out on that too. He's like, I thought we had all the time in the world. So definitely contradicting herself, and just, it really came off to me much less of a straight up interview and much more of an advocacy, agenda driven, and I'm not alleging anything. It just, that is the impression of my opinion as a viewer. It just looks so biased. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was absurd. And also what they would do is after each segment, where they're going to break, maybe she'd have a 30-second segment saying, here's the fact check of what he said and everything. It's just like, it's like you can't even just run the interview with all this stuff. So it looked over the top. But he did really, really well. And again, so much that the left, people on the left were coming online saying, I can't believe they had him on. I can't believe they gave him a platform and everything. Well, you're only saying that because you knew he did well. And so he did do really well. So I thought it was certainly a step forward for him and for the campaign. And again, just to normalize, all these ridiculous charges and all these different things. And it's like, well, yeah, here he is. He's the same guy.
And how many times we're going to run this play? Thing. Mike Wallace, Christian Welker, Caitlin Collins, dude, it's just getting worse. It's just getting worse. And even, a little bit disappointed in Megyn Kelly's latest interview with him, but I mean, it's just getting worse, dude. People, the gotcha interview, it's not going to work. Get him to admit to something. Put some words in. Get him to phrase the question different ways. Just shove it in there. Just try to get him to say yes. It's like, dude, nobody cares. These games. First of all, who's even watching? I watch this stuff because I have to. I didn't want to watch it. I looked at it. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's over an hour with Meet the Press. Like, stop. No, But then I started watching something like, oh, this is so bad. Like, I guess I watched 20 minutes. That's kind of what I got through. Like, it was a train wreck. It was so bad. It was unbelievable. Paul, tell me about the polls. Tell me about give me some behind the scenes of where we are with the race, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., maybe some of the party stuff, just some of the stuff that you're hearing out there, because I know you're really jacked in on Twitter. Senator Romney's no longer running. There's some things that are shifting out there right now, very fast now.
Yeah, I think that there are things shifting. And yes, Romney is not going to run again. That kind of surprised some people. There's some people that think, well, maybe he believes Trump's going to win and he just kind of doesn't want to be a part of the situation anymore. There's also some people who feel like Gavin Newsom saying he's not getting involved. So if anybody wanted to try to sub him in for Joe Biden, he's like, nope, not doing that. There are people that feel like, well,
we will. Paul will. I appreciate that. We'll pick it up next segment. Lot to get to in this last segment. Unbelievable. You're listening to John D. Villarreal Radio Show here on Newstalk 1040 AM, Greater Tampa Bay, and live on LinkedIn and YouTube. Be right back in about 5 minutes. Stay tuned.
Offices.
Okay, we're getting ready for the next segment, last segment here. Probably in about 1 minute.
As they take
Okay, what's good? Newstalk 1040 AM listeners, John D. Villarreal here with a little bit of a hoarse voice, just getting over some sickness here, September 18th, 5:35 actually. And this is the last segment. We've been talking about so much today. We've in this show. We're joined by Paul at Villarreal. We've been talking about President Trump. We've been talking about technology, regulation, Richmond, north of Richmond, the 2024 race. A lot to talk about. Paul, you were in the middle of something right here. Why don't you continue rolling with what you were talking about there?
Yeah, so I was just saying that we were talking about Senator Romney is going to step down and not run for re-election. And I just saying that there was some speculation from people that perhaps he's realizing that the party is kind of going more towards the Trump version rather than his version or the Mitch McConnell version and so forth. And so he just kind of wants to step away from that. Also, we've talked about this. He doesn't want to lose. I mean, if you lose, then that's kind of a mark against you. I'm not saying he would lose, but he doesn't want to lose. And I was also mentioning Governor Newsom, who, I don't know, maybe a week ago came out and said, look, I'm out for the 2024 election. I'm not doing it. If Joe Biden doesn't run, then Kamala Harris is next in line. And there are people who believe that Governor Newsom may very well be hoping that Biden and Harris don't win, because then he's cleanly able to come in 2028. Of course, if they do win and Kamala steps in, then there might not be an avenue for Governor Newsom in the near future. Now, that, of course, is speculation. I don't know anything. I haven't heard anybody say that, but there are people thinking that. And look, this is the way that the political game goes. You have to kind of have the right timing for things. So we'll see about that. We're talking about polls. Right now, in the poll of polls on Real Clear Politics, President Trump is leading President Biden by about, I don't want to say like 0.3%, which for this time in the cycle, compared to where it was in 2020, is really good. Like, he's in a very good position right now. So he's doing well. Whereas if you compare Biden versus DeSantis in that poll of polls, Biden is up by like 3.5%. So Trump is kind of, certainly, if you want to go by electability, he's in the right spot right now. I think he's doing very well. There's now, of course, speculation about who's going to be his potential vice presidential pick. There's certainly talk about Kristi Noem, Governor Noem, after she endorsed him last week. Now, there's been some, rumors put out about her this past week. I don't even really want to get into them because I don't, we're not going to give any credibility to anything. I have no idea about anything. But she's certainly, I think, high up on the list. We were also talking about McCarthy. One of the other potential VP candidates, in my opinion, is Representative Byron Donalds, who we like a lot. Now, the House is currently working on, they're working on government funding. And Donalds apparently was part of the Freedom Caucus group that negotiated with the Main Street Caucus. And there are people on the right that are unhappy with the plan that Representative Donalds came up with. So now I'm hearing things like, oh, he can't, we don't want this guy for vice president, all this stuff. But as you know, when it comes time for all these negotiations, that's when everybody pretends that they can get everything you want and they're more conservative than you and all that type of stuff. As you said with Speaker McCarthy, I think you're right. He's got a very narrow majority, and I think so far he's done pretty well. So Representative Donalds might be coming from, look, this is practically what we can get, not kind of in a dream scenario of what we want to get. So we'll see. We still have to keep an eye on where President Trump is thinking about the vice presidential candidate. But as we both said, it's clear he's going to be the nominee. I don't think there's any way around that, and that's the track that we're on.
So in that situation, do you think, here's what I want to get to right now in the last 20 minutes. What is the percentage chance? First of all, well, I'm saying two things at once. How many people do you think, what percentage do you think are really sort of up to speed, in the know, if you will? Or, I don't know what you want to call them, that really get what's going on with all this, number one. Number two, what prediction or percentage chance do you think that we'll see the Republican Party really coalesce and get itself together? Because you've got to have everyone getting on board this. You can't have this never Trumping type of stuff, whatever, number one. Number two, you have to be prepared for the way the 2024 campaign is going to be done in terms of the early voting and the ballot stuff, all this type of stuff. Like, are we prepared? Is the Republican Party really prepared for 2024?
That's a great question. Well, I think that there are signs that they're starting to rally. They're starting to come to grips with that Trump is going to be the nominee. For example, maybe we mentioned it earlier, Ken Griffin, who was the big mega donor for Ron DeSantis, he's backed off of Governor DeSantis and has basically said he's not decided on who he's going to back. Well, I think not too long ago, he was pretty decided that he wasn't going to back President Trump. Now he's backed off of that. So that's a good sign. Woody Johnson, who is the owner of the New York Jets, and he was the ambassador to the United Kingdom under President Trump, he's working behind the scenes to start getting donors and donor events together to kind of start getting money for President Trump. So there are some good signs, but as I think as we both know, there are still people who are not on board, who are not ready for the unity. Thinking people like Mitch McConnell, maybe some of the Bushes, Liz Cheney, this type of thing. The one thing that's, I think, useful to know, however, and I take this from the pollster that I talk about all the time, Rich Barris, who's very good. He polls these things. He's like, look, if Mitt Romney or Liz Cheney or Joe Manchin ran third party against Biden and Trump, they're going to take more votes from Biden than Trump. So even if they tried to do that, it's not going to work, or it's unlikely to work. So even if they want to do that strategy, if they want to do that, it's probably not going to hurt Trump. It's probably going to help Trump. So I don't know. I think it's the real thing, as you said a moment ago, is going to come down to early voting, get out the vote, mail-in voting, etc., and particularly get out the vote before Election Day. That's where it's going to be won and lost, in my opinion. I can tell you, somebody living in Pennsylvania, it was absolutely critical. The mail-in voting was critical in 2020 and 2022. Without mail-in voting, Trump would have won here in 2020, and Dr. Oz would have beaten John Fetterman in 2022. No question. Have not seen a dedicated effort yet from the GOP in this. They didn't see it in 2020, didn't see it in 2022. I know that President Trump's team is aware of this. I know that the GOP is aware of this. Are they actually going to be able to get it done out on the field, however? I don't know. That's the real question. If they do, he's going to win, in my opinion. They're not going to match what the Democrats do. They're just not. They're not in that level right now, and they're not going to get there. But if they can have it somewhat competitive, get something going, that might be enough, particularly because Biden's support has softened It's just not what it was,
Big time.
and that's not a real shock. It's not a
We're
big
seeing
surprise.
reports. We're seeing reports now that, like, I just saw something on Fox News that supposedly, like, some Democrats are considering replacing Vice President Harris with Governor Newsom as vice president. Like it's all these crazy machinations. Like how do you get these people in office that can't win an election? You know what I mean? Like it's crazy. I just don't see where the enthusiasm is for President Biden. I mean, yeah, the hard left maybe. I mean, a certain percentage, but like all those moderates. I mean, Trump's winning independents big. And again, we have over a year to go, dude. I mean, Biden, when he took his trip, I mean, he just wasn't sounding great at all. I mean, I don't get it. I mean, I know the media is going to be in full narrative mode, but I don't know, dude. It just, how many people are super enthusiastic to vote for Biden? It's crazy. I don't know.
There aren't a lot of people enthusiastic about him. I will tell you this though, and this is what the early voting really lets you do is it lets you minimize the enthusiasm gap. I mean, based in 2022,
right, totally.
where the generic ballot was for congressional, Republicans should have crushed the Democrats, and they didn't. And that's because of early voting.
Sorry, I'll say this too. I minimize the enthusiasm gap, number one, in terms of actually participating. But I also think it helps to maximize the press, the media bias, if you will, because all that earned media, all the press, that all has an effect. When you start dumping in the ads and doing all this, debates and whatever is gonna, the covering the rallies, all that stuff comes at the end. So you don't hear unfiltered as much from the candidates. That's all sort of perceptions and whatever news story we're running through and all that type of stuff. So I think that's also those two impacts have a big. And again, we're talking about elections that are decided by small amounts, but I just don't know how close it's going to be because, I mean, obviously it's going to be somewhat close. That's just the way that it is, right? I mean, with the two parties, but I think it can be extremely close. Obviously, we could see that again. But with the way things are going, it could break a little bigger than people like Florida. I mean, I think that was a bit less about Governor DeSantis. Obviously, it was a lot about Governor DeSantis, and I'll say it again. He may go down as one of the greatest governors, if not the greatest governor in Florida history. Okay, because of the situation. But I think that a lot of that was a sign of the time, if you will, and people saying, "Look, we don't want what these other states are doing. We want something different. Governor DeSantis has been giving us that, and we want to totally reward that." Similarly, I think that people, as we've seen around the world, maybe just done with all this stuff. And as you're seeing, again, if you look at Bud Light, if you're looking at Target, you can go on down the list, right? Dang. Oh. Okay, yeah, we're definitely having little technical things here. And I apologize for that. I don't know what's happened. It's one of those days. But what I'm saying is that I think that, things could really spiral out of control politically. Could really deteriorate fast for President Biden. It could be a very, very close election, Paul, but I think things could deteriorate very, very rapidly if they continue to go like this. I think there's a lot of people that are just not down with this. And I think that's what we saw with the 2022 midterms here in Florida. Yes, some of that was a good bit of that was Governor DeSantis and his leadership. But I think a lot of it was just like the state changed. People came here because they want to change. And I think globally, people have just had enough of all of this, all these related factors that we've been talking about all show. Do you agree with that? I'm having a hard time with hearing Paul.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And I think Reuters, somebody put up an electoral map based upon Reuters polling right now, and it's like 315 electoral votes for Trump. So that gives you a sense of where it would be. That would be a much bigger victory for him than 2016, and obviously significantly different than what it looked like in 2020. I think that what's going to happen is the left is going to try as hard as they possibly can to make this a choice election, which is what was done in 2020. A choice election being my opponent is not as good as me, even if you don't think I'm very good. And so when 2012, that was, okay, maybe you don't think President Obama is doing great, but Mitt Romney will be worse than me. And so this is where all the lawfare and the cases and the trials and all the stuff is going to come in. That's what they're going to try to do. They're going to try to dust up Trump as much as they possibly can because I think they realize that's their only real chance. But as we see right now, it's not having an effect. I mean, again, the way that President Trump was greeted in Iowa 2 weeks ago, I've never seen any politician greeted by that. And Iowa's a pretty purple state. So people are not going for the same tricks. And yeah, I think that's a good sign for President Trump.
Well, and that's where we brought in the whole Ken Paxton thing and that trial. And again, very similar, all these charges and coulda, shoulda, woulda, and rumor and innuendo and all this and impeachment and everything like that. And here's another thing, maybe totally unrelated. I don't, but we've been seeing Nancy Mace, Congresswoman Mace, out, pretty newer Congresswoman out on all these shows and Speaker McCarthy made certain what's up with her? She doesn't seem to be the biggest Trump fan. South Carolina, what's going on with all that?
We've talked about this off air.
Well, let me put it another way. What do you think? Let me ask you two questions. I'll tee it up this way. What do you think the Democrats are going to run on in 2024? Right? I've heard it's abortion and maybe another issue or two, and hence, we saw so many questions from Kristen Welker on abortion, right? And why do you think that the people that are maybe not fully on board Team Trump right now, including the Republican Party, do you think that they're afraid that Trump can't win? Do you think they think that the plan is better? Or do you think that they just are opposed to Trump and can we pull this party? Do you think that the Republican Party will come together? I guess those are the two things that I want to talk about.
I think that the people who are opposed to Trump know he can win, and that's not what they want. Because, look, you don't have to win presidential elections to still have power. As long as you're winning your election in the Senate, as long as you're winning your election in the House, and you are a meaningful person, you have power. In the Senate, you don't have to be in the majority. But the way that the filibuster works, if you have 41 members of your group, your party, you have power because somebody's got to get picked off in order to get anything passed. And so I think that people like Mitch McConnell and other people, the old guard, they want the party back for them rather than it being a MAGA party. As you talked about earlier in the show, there are perks to that. There are benefits to that. There are setting up lobbying careers. There are maybe you get a benefit from whatever the legislation is passed. They want, they want those things back. They want the spoil system back, in my opinion. And President Trump derails all of that. So I know that there are establishment people who believe that even if President Trump loses this election, he's going to run next election. And so they are afraid they're not going to get the party back. They're not going to get it back. And so the ideal situation for them is to try to beat him in the primary. Right now, as we both say, that isn't going to happen.
It's not going to happen. So let me ask you this as the last two questions, and we can wrap it up here for this show. Number one, and I've asked it a couple different ways. Do you think that we're able to unify the party? Do you think the party will be unified? And how big of a faction do you think these never Trumpers are going to be? Number one. Number two is, if President Trump is elected again, what do you think that administration, that term looks like? Like, how aggressively is he going to try to drain the swamp? Do you think that he's much wiser now? I mean, I think so. And do you think that he's sort of unconstrained by, trying to run again for another term and all that? And I guess I'll put a third thing on the mix here, which is, how impactful do you think a third-party candidates might be? Because now we're talking about Cornel West. We may be talking about Robert Kennedy Jr. I mean, what level of impact do we think we'll see there?
Okay, so there's 4 questions there. First one, can the Republican Party unify? Yeah, I think it can mostly unify. I think it will get more unified as we get towards the election. There will be people who won't unify, but I think overall it will. Number 2, what is the effect, or what's the how many never Trumpers are there? Well, there are fewer never Trumpers than there are only Trumpers. That's been polled by a number of people.
There's no question about that. No question about that.
But no doubt about that.
If never Trump's 5% or 2% of the electorate, or 3%, that could make a difference. That could make the difference.
It could. It could. There's no doubt about that. That's true. I mean, that has to be dealt with. We'll just have to see. I don't know. The third thing is, what would a Trump second term look like? I honestly think it would be relatively calm. We know he's not into foreign conflicts. He doesn't have to worry about reelection, as you said. I think he'd do a great job in a second term. He just won't have to deal with all of this stuff. And I think probably a lot of people in D.C. would kind of make peace with, look, this is it. We're not going to be able to get him on another Russia thing or something, so let's just prepare for when he leaves. Now, that might be a little bit too optimistic, but we'll see. I mean, maybe we'll find that out. And the fourth question, I can't remember what it was.
Oh, yeah, I can't remember what the fourth question was either. Okay. It doesn't matter.
It was something aligned with that, like what would Trump's term look like? And then, it was just basically that. Would he be unconstrained in this type of thing? And yeah, I do. I think he would be. This is when you hear the kind of the fear tactics from the left. It's like, oh my gosh, if he gets in, then he'll never leave. And I mean, how can you even? I don't even know where you're coming with that. But this is the scenario that they're trying to create. That somehow it's going to be this horrible thing. And again, you kind of
talking about not leaving. How come the Obamas still have a house in Washington D.C.? What's going on with that?
It's a great question. And as we both know from that Tablet Mag interview of Obama's biographer, they're still very much in the loop. And I mean, there's still apparently White House people going over there having meetings and stuff. So, that's a great question.
I think that what's very interesting is whether Trump wins or Biden wins, I think we're going to see very different terms from both of them. I think there's just a lot of questions, going on with it. I think it's going to be a very interesting year as well, because now you have a situation where so many things are coming together, like UAW strike, interest rates, student loans kicking back in. China's economy has some challenges. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on here. Housing market. I don't want to be doom and gloom, but it's getting bad. We'll have to see what's going on, and that's what I'm saying. Like, people can't get distracted by this stuff. The left, right, shiny objects, different things like that. Like, there's serious problems out there. There's serious things to be done. We need people that are going to step up and be real leaders and look out for their constituents and try to. We got to work together to get to a better situation, a better way. But this is America. And I believe in you, and I believe in us, and I appreciate you being right here for the John D. Villarreal Show on Newstalk 1040. Appreciate the Newstalk 1040 team. They're awesome. Hey, listen, have a great week. Voice was out. Hopefully you'll be back next week. Did the best I can to deliver you a great show. And also, we appreciate our YouTube and LinkedIn viewers as well. Thanks so much. Have a great week. I'm John D. Villarreal. Stay blessed. See you next week.